All right, guys, welcome back to another Black Lives Save Lives Spotlight interview. Today, I had the pleasure of interviewing a guy who, I've known. He's from my hometown, and I've heard a lot of good, positive things that he's been doing as of late. So I reached out, and we're just gonna chop it up. So, everybody, Mr. Mark Peterson Jr., how you doing, man?
Doing all right, bro. For one, definitely appreciate the opportunity, just to utilize this platform, just to continue putting some positivity in the community.
Sure. Yeah. So, why don't you just tell us about yourself? Tell us what you do, official titles, what you got going on, and then we got some questions for you.
All right. Well, born and raised Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Went down to Tennessee State University for undergrad. Was quite unsure of what I wanted to do after school and ended up in education. Ended up in education and fell in love with education. So for the past 7, 8 years, I've been an educator, starting as a paraprofessional, working my way up to a seventh grade English teacher, which was my latest title. And due to some health reasons and just due to the strange nature of 2020, it put me in a situation where I wasn't able to sign another contract. And in that time, I was able to lean on a lot of my other hats and a lot of my other ideas to try to really bring them to life, to grow some legs, and so that one day they can walk and exist on their own. So outside of education, was once a freelance designer. I have a company,
Nice.
IllGraphic Branding, that we can talk about in more detail as the conversation goes on. And then through my design company, I started a brand campaign entitled Why We Still Killing Each Other, or an acronym WWSKEO. And yeah. I'm pretty sure more and more detail will come out in this conversation. But just
Sure.
to introduce myself and the hats that I wear: educator, designer, brander, if that's the case, visionary.
All right, Mark. Let's start from the inception. So, Milwaukee, born and bred, whole life
hmm
there. What's your family dynamic? You got married,
Um,
single parent.
nope. Two-parent household. My father, police officer, ended up retiring a homicide detective. He was on the force for some odd 27, 28 years. My mother's an accountant. She's a controller over at our church home. But I mean, grew up tight knit family. My family was almost the glue for both sides, my father's side and my mother's side, in which we're able to bring our entire family together, just on multiple occasions, start traditions. And, it's cool now as a father. I felt that I had a really good example and a really good picture of a family. And I use that as something to kind of aim towards as I raise, my daughter and my girlfriend as we building our own family.
Okay, sounds like you had a good model
Oh
to
yeah.
to emulate. That's what's up. So, going into your school education. So you said you went to Tennessee State, which is an HBCU, I believe.
Yep. Yep.
So
But
what?
it's interesting though. Go
What?
ahead, go ahead. You asking the question right here, because that's the $1 million question. Go ahead.
Tell me some of the stigmas behind the
Yep.
HBCU. I think some of those, a lot of those walls are being crushed today because
hmm
vice pres, and
Yep.
so um, what made you make that decision versus going to a bigger traditional university?
Well, I mean, it's ironic that I ended up at an HBCU because if you're familiar with Milwaukee, they had the 220 program. So we
Yep.
stayed in the city as a kid, but I was able to get bussed out to schools in the suburban communities. So I went through kindergarten and high school in Glendale, Wisconsin. Glendale is a predominantly white community. Schools were, I mean, somewhat mixed, and the schools that I went to were probably more mixed than other of those, elementary and middle schools and high schools.
Okay.
But my sister, we're about 7 years apart. So around age 11, she was heading off to college in about 1999, and she went to Tennessee State. And being that I grew up in the school system, I didn't have a black teacher, never had a black teacher. I can count on one hand how many black teachers were in my K through 12 experience. So after getting that exposure, traveling with my sister as we moved her in 1999, I mean, I knew then and there that that's the school that I would go to. So high school, we fast forward to high school. It's college application time. It's ACT time. I knew I had a pretty good score, and I knew I would probably be accepted wherever I decided to go. But like I said, at the age of 11, I knew that I was going to Tennessee State University.
Okay, that's very early on.
Hmm.
That's what's up. So, during your experiences there, obviously you can't really compare and contrast directly because you went to Tennessee State the whole time. But what would you say some of
Hmm.
the benefits for somebody who's on the fence about maybe committing with athletics, scholarship, or anything
Hmm.
in regards to committing to an HBCU versus a, a traditional
Predominant
university? We'll call it. Or
traditional unit.
yeah, we'll call it
The
that.
PWIs. We could keep
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
We could
yeah,
keep it traditional universities,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I
Keep
mean,
it.
because I mean, I get overjoyed. I just saw a former student the other day, actually, and a friend of mine. She posted her. She's going down to Tennessee State, and one thing that I can't replace about that experience is it's from a relationship standpoint, from a network standpoint, from an exposure standpoint. I was able to see blackness on so many different levels in so many different fields, and not just blackness, but great examples of blackness. So again, having having gone through an experience for 14 years in school and to not really have a black perspective, from an educator or even have that image in front of me,
Yeah,
um, Tennessee State University really, really, really gave me an example of what Black greatness looked like, what Black professionalism looked like. And it made it feel like it was more attainable. Like I could become a professor one day, or I could become an engineer or a pilot, or whatever the case may be. So the network that it exposed me to, and then ultimately, another great part, I didn't feel like a number, right? My professors that I met there, I still have relationships with to this day.
okay.
And opposed to being lost and becoming another student on a campus, I mean, if you weren't in class, they will find you. It was less so about you being another number, and it was more so about I'm about to work hard. As much as you mess up, I'm about to work hard to make sure you get across that stage. And that is something that all of my professors, they did for me, and they do for that family. It's a family culture down there.
Absolutely. I think they know there's much more at stake than just some failed degrades and
Yep.
some lost money at that point. So I
Mhm.
guess that's where that inspirational piece comes in. And
Mhm.
it's been said many many times. You see somebody in your position. That's why that black representation is so important. It just I don't know. It just
Uh,
makes it so much easier to believe in yourself if you can
it's
see
everything.
somebody that look like you doing what
It's
you do.
everything.